Peace world, peace world. How you doing? It's your brother Mikey Fever, NYP Talk Show. Another great episode. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe. Tonight we got a special guest, a brother that I have been communicating with for about a year, and now we finally got him. Brother Soul Magic. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, Mikey. Thanks for having me on and inviting me to have a chit chat of sorts. And I look forward to the discourse, brother.
Definitely. I like the symbolism in the background. Salute to the brothers of the craft. Peace to all you. Some motive B, from A to Z. Tonight's episode, we'll be talking about As Above, So Is Below. Prince Hall Reflections with Brother Soul. Peace to the brothers of the craft again. Shout out to Prince Hall. Shout out to all traveling men out there. Peace to the nation of gods and earth and OI and all that good stuff. We here tonight. So, Brother Soul, man, take us, give us a journey, man. Where you from, bro?
Originally, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I was born and raised in Baltimore. Graduated from the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute in 1993. After that, I entered basic training. The United States Army. I went to Fort Benning right out of high school, and it was the first time that I'd really been out of the state, right? So I remember coming through Atlanta Airport at that time on my way to Columbus, Georgia, and I just thought to myself, man, I got to live here one day. I guess it was a lot to take in, right? So fast forward, I finished up my basic training, go back to Baltimore, did a little bit of college, got married, had a son, came here, Georgia, in 1999, and been here ever since.
Well, that's peace, man. Peace. B Moore's in the house, man. Where you from, the west side of Baltimore, east side, as they put it?
Yes, sir.
Or the west side?
Grove, west side, yes, sir.
Oh,
Southwest, to be exact, yes, sir.
All right. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's where so-called Avon Barksdale was from and all that from the Wire.
That's a good question. When I first moved here, a lot of people asked me about the Wire, and I hadn't seen it, so I couldn't confirm or deny. I have since seen it. I'm not sure what side the Barksdale crew was from, but a lot of the background was reminiscent of where I'm from.
All right, cool. That's peace, man. And B Moore it's a very historical state. So as far as that, join the military after school, having a child, getting married. What started your journey into wanting to obtain knowledge of self? Like, were your family religious background?
Man, knowledge of self was like from the very beginning. Some of my earliest memories was either my mom or my grandfather, my grandmother, aunts, uncles, you name it. You know what I mean? Telling me about who I am and my place in the world, and not just me, but my cousins. And I later realized it's a cultural thing. It was important to know where you're from so that you know where you're going. That was like hammered into me, right? So, my mother instilled the habit of reading very early, you know what I mean, and would feed me so-called Black history books to read, and that's really where it started for me. That was the first place I ever read the name Prince Hall, and it really wasn't much said other than he was a Negro. This is what the book said. He was a Negro who was the worship master of a lodge. That was all the book said. And then years later, while I'm at college, I grew up in a very strict Christian background. And then when I got to college, I kind of rebelled, meaning I became a Rastafarian, right, which was wild in itself. Yeah. And I ended up living in Trinidad for about a year and a half. And I had the opportunity to study with the 12 tribes of Israel, which I would say is probably the first magical school of sorts that I was a part of, because their interpretation of the Bible is highly metaphysical. And understanding these metaphysical principles would lead to things happening that would be considered magical in a sense, So
yeah. Oh, that's what's up, man. Trinidad, shout out to Trinidad. So you joined you was a Rastafari, and then you joined this 12 tribes of Israel in Trinidad, which basically, as you mentioned, metaphysical aspect of the Bible, understand the meaning of the words and evoking and learn how to evoke and such and such.
And being able to read the allegory. You know,
Yeah.
before that, the Bible was a very literal book to me. And then when we started exploring the meanings of the names, now when you're reading it and you're inserting the meanings of the names, it's a whole different story. You know, it's a whole different thing going on. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, yo. You kind of resemble my brother Ron Brown a little bit. I don't know. You're probably from the same tribe.
Brown,
Yeah, I
really,
do.
really.
Yeah, I probably do,
Where is he
man.
from? Or is he from?
He's from Harlem. He's a Harlem. I'm
Oh,
from
he's from.
Brooklyn. Yeah,
Gotcha,
he's a
gotcha,
Harlem cat. Harlem in the building. You know, the guys that
gotcha.
get fly for no reason, they go to the corner store. They got to take like four hours to get dressed before they go in the corner
Yeah.
store.
So I hear. So I hear. You say you from
Yeah,
Brooklyn?
I'm from Brooklyn, man.
Where? My son was born in Brooklyn at Kings County. I used to live
Oh, damn, that's the
between.
house where I was born in.
Yeah, I used to live on Nostrand Avenue between Maple and Midwood. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's my area, man.
Yeah,
I used
yeah.
to
I
live
was
on
there.
Lincoln and Lincoln between Rogers and Flatbush.
Okay, okay. Yes, sir. Small world, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. That's peace, man. So you say like after the 12 study with the 12 tribes of Israel, you mentioned that your mother and your family always put knowledge of self information into you as far as black books and culture
Hmm.
whatsoever.
Hmm.
And any other groups or pieces of information that you built upon that you were
Well,
introduced to?
well, from the when I was in college, I also studied with the 5% Nation of God's Nurse.
Oh
My
wow.
enlightener, I found actually at the time online through Yahoo at the time. And my
Uh-huh.
enlightener, he was a student at, I want to say, at Duke. And he gave me the 120, online, which was wild for that time because the internet was fairly new in that way. You know what I mean? Like Yahoo,
Yeah.
anybody could build a page on Yahoo during that time. You know what I mean? That's how open it was. So I went from the 5% Nation into directly into Rastafarianism. I did Rasta for about 11 or 12 years, something like that. And then I
Mm-hmm.
got into a transition from there into the Moorish Holy Temple of Science,
Oh
which is
word.
which is a little distinct from the Moorish Science Temple of America, which I also did some studies with those brothers too. But my nationality card is from the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, which is a little different. Um,
I never heard that one before.
yeah,
Peace
yeah.
and the Moors. But stories. Can you expound on that a little bit if you can?
Well, from the perspective is that the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the world is said to be the original name of the organization before it was changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America. It is
Mm-hmm.
also a faction because whenever there is a organization with a leader, when that leader passes away, it tends to fracture, right? So you have this faction, that faction, this faction. So this faction, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of America, was a man known as the chauffeur. He was Gibbons ill, and they
Mm.
called him Noble Jew Ali reincarnated, which other Moors scoffed at because there's no way he could be the prophet reincarnated. I'm not going to get into all of that dogma, but that's the main difference between the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and brothers who are of the Moorish Science Temple of America. You know, so
Oh, that's peace. So
yeah.
how long did you stay there for?
Until the temple dissolved, the temple, the divine minister ended up taking a job as a truck driver, and
Okay.
the Sunday school and the Holy Day meetings were held at his apartment. So when he took a truck driver job, he sold the spot. So it was about 5 6 years. You know what I mean? About 5 or 6 years.
Oh, that's peace.
Hmm.
That's peace. So after you did all that, you traveled. Man, you went to many schools of thoughts.
Yeah.
There's the
Yeah.
Rastafarian,
Hmm.
5% Nation,
Hmm.
um, the 12 tribes of Israel with the Trinidadian thing. I believe I said that, and then the Moorish Holy Science Temple. I don't know if I'm saying it
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, Moorish Holy Temple of Science. And even though we can say that there are many schools, I look at them as two schools, and they're built on, I believe, on Garveyism. When I was in college, I was heavy into Marcus Garvey life and lessons, opinions, and principles and things of that nature. And so The Moors hailed Garvey, so I
Hmm.
saw that as an Islamic school of thought. And even though Rastafarianism is a little different, it still would fall under Christianity. It's still Christ. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a different form of Christ, but it's still Christ, right? So it's
Hmm.
really two schools of thought that was built on a Garveyistic ideal, which even contributed to me becoming a Freemason because, from my understanding, Garvey was also a member there too. So I was a big fan of Garvey in my late teens, early 20s, because, and I still believe that his solution is probably the solution, but we're a long way from that solution, in my opinion. So,
Oh, of course, because I think our people were so divided. You know, being a Garvey that generated, then you had Elijah Muhammad who had the same ideas,
hmm
separation. But people, when they hear that word separation, they assume that you're meaning to be hateful and such.
hmm hmm
I see that self-preservation, basically, isolating the sickness before it gets within our communities, to work on what's going on within before we could go back, go without, you know.
absolutely,
But
as a sin, as
I don't think I don't think they're ready for that. But it's dope that you study Garveyism, man, because Garvey was that dude, man.
yeah,
He
absolutely,
was that dude.
yeah, yeah.
He
And
was
that's
very, he
not to
was very.
say that that time was a time where you also had Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. You had three different schools of thought pretty much preaching the same thing. It's ironic that Du Bois is the one that actually went back to Africa, you know,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
you know how that goes. So with all the all these schools of thoughts and the study and of all these black collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and you said that Rastafarian is the school that led you into Freemasonry. Can you give us
Well,
a walk on
Garveyism,
how you got
Garveyism,
Garveyism? Yeah,
Garveyism. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
maybe the walk is correct. Yeah, you're correct. Tell us the initial step, what it took for you to get to masonry. Like, who did you reach out to? Did you, as they say, ask one to be one, or you just went seeking yourself?
Yeah, see that's interesting because I didn't know anyone here in Georgia that was a Freemason. Like you would see them, in
Hmm.
terms of you'll see, a logo on the back of their vehicle, have a T-shirt or whatever. But I didn't know any to ask any. And so
Hmm.
time went on, and I also should preface this by saying that at the time I decided to become a Freemason, shortly before that, I was a person that would be considered as an anti-Mason. I should probably say that first.
Hmm.
Um, and largely because, again, in college, I was hanging out with some of my peers, and one guy blurted out something about Masons being the head of the World Bank. And for one, I
Hmm.
didn't know that there was a World Bank at that time, and I didn't know what a Mason was. And so I decided to read up on it, and I found all this what I thought information that said that they were evil people. And then I met a guy. Fast forward to turn of the century, I met a guy who in my friend group. I mean, it's pretty cool, whatever. And then one day, about maybe a year and a half later, I saw him driving his car. He had the emblem on the back of his car. So I'm like, whoa, hold up, man. You know, I got this preconceived notion of what I believe a Mason is, and I'm like, this guy definitely is not that. So,
Yeah.
we chatted or whatever, and he was like, the only way you'll definitely know anything is to do it for yourself. You know what I mean? So then I took maybe another year and read up, and then my grandfather, I called him and I asked him, do you know anything about these Masons? And then my grandfather, it was like a maybe a 4 or 5 second pause, and he said, boy, that's a beautiful thing. And so we had this
Hmm.
conversation where now I'm learning that he was a Mason. He didn't wear rings or shirts or whatever, but he,
Yeah.
looking back, I could see that he was definitely a pillar of his community, no doubt, right? So I made up my mind that the only way that I would know, because I had a stack of books that said Masons were bad, and I had a stack of books saying that they were good. It's
It's
just
beautiful.
the only way to know was to do it. So I ended up reaching out to the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia directly. I spoke to a secretary, and he asked me to come down, and I came down. I took the day off work, and I went down there on Auburn Avenue at the time. They buzzed me in. I went upstairs, and he was like, "How can I help you?" I said, "I'm here because I want to be a Mason." And he was like, you know anybody? I was like, no, I don't know anybody. He was like, where do you live? I was like, I live so and so. He was like, well, there's a lodge right down the street from you. Take this phone number and call the secretary. And I was, after that, I was off to the races, you know. Got to know the secretary for about 6 months. When I first met him, I told him out the gate, look, I'm trying to join. And he's like, okay, we'll see. Older gentleman, right? So he's from the school, and they're from the school, the older ones. Like, okay, you can say anything. You're going to have to show me. I need to get to know you, things of that nature. And so he ran an after-school program for the kids in the area that I was living in. He had a store. So they would come in there after school. They could play video games or, you know, just things to keep them out of the way, out of the streets, and out of trouble. And it got to the point where I would get off work, drive 60 miles home because I was doing a 120-mile circuit every day. I get home, put down my things, I head to the shop, and, you know, just pretty much volunteer in the community. One day, he slid me in a petition. And he said, I believe you came here for this originally. I had forgotten. I was like, okay, I'm not going to press it. I thought I was maybe years away from a petition. So I wasn't even thinking about it. So I went and I got my first degree. I remember going in and saying, if I see any of that devil stuff, I'm out of there, you know.
All right, let's take it back. Before you got to your first degree, right? You got your petition.
Mm-hmm.
Did you felt that that sensation, like that anxiety kicking, like, yo, what am I doing? Because, you know, we all fell into those rabbit holes of, again, I'm keep saying, those David Icke books, those other black authors is talking all this radical stuff. You know, when you go in there, you're selling your soul. That's like boule, and, you know, that's on top of the boule and such. And black men are going in there. It's not made for them. This is the Europeans' playground. And, you know, Masons tend to be bloodsuckers of the people. You know, why everything is so secretive with them. Yeah. They are anti-progression, right?
Yeah, I did.
I know how you felt.
Yeah, I did have
I went the same thing. Huh?
I did have some hesitancy, just based on my first introduction to the topic, you know what I mean? But then when I came to understand that Prince Hall was associated with it, and again, I had only read one line, but he was embedded in Black history for some reason. And then I noticed that a lot more of the people that I learned about in Black history that were the vanguard, they were associated with the order one way or another, you know what I mean? So I think that kind of took some of the edge off, but I still felt like if, you know, I still didn't know for sure because I hadn't done it, you know. So part of me was still like, what if it's still on some rah-rah type stuff? And I was just like, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, you know what I mean?
When we get there. All right. Well, if I go into detail, you know, with the whole initiatic process, because we must respect the code of ethics and everything else, right? That day when you got that call, like, brother, it's time to come. I mean, not even, but, you know, it's time for you to come down, right? Describe that feeling when you knock on those doors. When it was time. It was
wild because, so I was getting off work. I'm driving home the day that I'm getting my first degree. I'm driving home again, 60 miles, and I'm supposed to be there at about 7. And about maybe 20 miles from home, my tire blows out. So I'm going to the side of the road trying not to crash, you know. And as I'm getting over, I notice in my rear view, I see another car getting over right behind me, which I thought was kind of wild. And then this guy jumps up out of his car. Not that it matters, but just for the purpose of the story, he was obviously he was a white guy, literally in a black suit with a black tie. He came up to me with black shades, so I'm tripping, right? I'm like, what's going on, right? He was a salesman. I later found out he was a wrench salesman, but he saw my tire blow out, and he offered assistance, and he helped me change my tire, and I made it to the lodge on time. So when I got there, and I told her that I'm here for the degrees, I was excited because I thought I wasn't going to get the opportunity because my tire blew out, you know? Yeah. And then this guy he tried to sell me a wrench set later, but that's beside the point. I think I bought it just out of gratitude because I wouldn't have made it there, right? But this guy who didn't know me from Adam pulling over when he saw me blow out, to me, that was like, okay, I'm on the right track. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, yeah.
irrespective of what I'm doing, before I learned things in certain ways, my family always told me that you got to pray on everything before you do it. So to me, that was confirmation. I'm on the right
On the
track.
right
So
path.
I was excited when I got there. Like, okay, let's do this. You know.
Definitely. Oh, that's dope. It'd be
Hmm.
funny if that guy was a brother. You never know.
Never know. Never know.
You never know, because it's always like those little, as they say, what coincidences or things that take place. You be like, I don't know, but whatever. So you felt it was the right path. You went there, went through your first degree. How
Hmm.
did you feel after that once you did it? Did you fall upon any of that demonic stuff people say? Were they
Nah,
goats jumping around? People
nah.
jumping on goats, drinking out of skulls, and all that extra
It,
nonsense.
it was nothing like that. For me, it's really even given the constraints, it would still be difficult to put into words
Yeah, exactly. Of
because
course.
I felt like that I was doing something significant. I was 25 at the time. You know what I mean? Really trying to build the foundation still of my life because my son was 2 or 3. I
Yeah.
was married at the time, really trying to be a family man. So to me, this was a step in that direction. And so I really felt like I wanted to do my absolute best because what people don't know is that, yeah, there's an initiatic aspect, but there's also an aspect where you have to learn certain things and be able to demonstrate that you've learned those things. And,
Exactly.
it was overwhelming. I wasn't the best student in school. So when I got that information that I had to demonstrate, I was just like, man, it's like I'm in college again.
Yeah. And
So
that's like the generic saying, as they say, everything, all communication is nonverbal,
mhm,
symbolic, and as you said, you must demonstrate what you observe,
yeah,
consciously and subconsciously, and
yeah,
based on what you're reading. So it's like it's coming into fruition.
hmm,
The information that you're receiving. So
yes,
I
sir.
know that feeling as you're
Yes, sir.
breaking it down. I understand it. So with that being said, like as with the Prince Hall aspect of it, we know who
Mm-hmm.
Prince Hall was. He was given a charter within African and Masonry to provide African Americans with, as they say, authorization to do the craft in the U.S. Right? Am I
Yeah,
right, Lon?
I guess that's one way you could put it. The lodge itself wasn't necessarily for African Americans; it was for Masons. But
Mm-hmm.
social climate in America was such that you know black and white people didn't occupy the same spaces. So a lot of people will tend to think because of the culture of America at the time that it was for African American people or African people or Negroes or whatever, but it was for Masons, irrespective of whatever ethnicity
Yeah,
they were. But because of
exactly.
segregation here, it was what it was.
All right, cool, cool. So I have I have a few questions, right?
Hmm.
Very basic. Is how did the civil rights movement interact with or draw influence from Prince Hall Masonic leadership?
I would say that the civil rights movement will have its roots in, like, when you get to the historical aspect now of the things that Prince Hall is said to have done, aside from his Masonic exploits, he was a community leader. He and his brethren were community leaders, and in a very profound sense, I would say the original civil rights movement. When we talk about the civil rights movement, we tend to talk about the civil rights movement of, um, I would say, my grandparents' time. Dr.
Yeah,
King, McTill, Rosa Parks, um, A. Philip Randolph, all of those people during that time. But it was going
yeah,
on before that. Like for example, Dr. King was his father was also struggling for civil rights. You know what I mean? And his
yeah.
father before him. This is something that's been going on since at least I'll say 1619, but let's just say 1866.
Mm-hmm.
Which interestingly enough, manumission 1866. You'll see a lot of lodges grow brothers were actually coming straight from the plantations and becoming Freemasons, and then building the communities that they lived in. So it's always been kind of integral to the community building, but not just Prince Hall Masonry. We call it Prince Hall today, but back then it was
Yeah.
Negro Masonry, right?
Yeah.
But then you also had Odd Fellows. You had the AME Church. You had all of these different kinds of fraternal groups. I remember
Mhm.
reading in The Independent, which was a black-owned paper here in Georgia. It went defunct about a century ago, but one of the articles said about around 1915 was where the article's from. It said that what we, meaning black people, were most known for in this country was fraternalism.
Yeah.
Everybody belonged to something. You might not
Yeah.
have been a Mason, you might have been an elk. You might not have been an elk, you might have been a son or daughter of Tabor. Or you might
Mm.
just be in the church. But everybody, we understood community a lot better than we do now. I
Yeah.
feel.
I wonder what happened to that because within the black community, we have organizations that have that label of religious organization groups. Like we have the NOI, the Moors,
Mm-hmm.
and even down to the Hebrew Israelites, right? But I
Yeah.
don't see too many other black fraternities out there. You know why?
I,
Like why is that?
I think it depends where you look. And
Hmm.
I say that because, like, the religious organizations, I think, are a little bit different in the sense that they're not just what Garvey envisioned as what he called a confraternity.
Hmm.
It also was, like you said, this religious aspect, and this is where they um, drew their unity and their common experiences from. If a person is in a collegiate fraternity, it's not necessarily going to be a community bond that way. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you could be in a collegiate frat and have a different religion from the other guy. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
that's not going to happen in the Nation of Islam. They are Muslim over there. You
Yeah.
know,
Straight up.
you know what I'm saying? I think that's a different dynamic, but you will see the collegiate fraternities, you will see the Masons, you will see us at your food banks, you will see us at the exits of your communities, raising money for little pee wee football and stuff like that. You won't
Mhm.
necessarily see us taking a political, well, maybe the collegiate ones, but Masons, we
Legion.
tend to try to stay out of the political thing.
That's a fact. Yes, we do. That's a fact. That's a fact. And then somebody in the comment, Wennis Daily says Sons of Temperance. Temperance. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that group right there?
No, no, it's an interesting name. So maybe he's using it as a general descriptor, adjective of Masons in general. I don't know. I've never heard
Yeah,
of that sense of
you know,
temperance.
with this shit right here, people might go out there and create their own fraternities, man. I
Man,
hope
they're
we do.
having all the time. People always creating their own thing, and I think that's
Yeah,
a part of the problem. You know, everybody want to lead.
everybody want to lead. Uh,
Hmm.
you never know. So what role did literacy, self education, and personal refinement play in the early lodge system?
When you say literacy, this is going to sound silly, but you can read words, you can read symbols, you can read runes. So when we talk about literacy, you can read politics, but not know how to read a book. You know, does that
Yeah,
make sense? Like you can read what's going on and how to be effective in a situation, but you might not be able to pick up a book and read the preface.
as far as like for instance, like I don't want to probably be using a bad analogy, but we had like the NOI taught self awareness of our people, teaching them who they are, not
Mm-hmm.
what so-called white men tell you about your history. Same
Right.
thing when the Moors thought about nationality, knowing thyself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
above and below.
Yeah.
What did outside of the brotherhood, what did masonry teach? I hate to put it like that. Prince Hall Masonry teach our people at that
I
time.
think I think one of the biggest lessons that was kind of embedded in Prince Hall Masonry is the naming of the lodge African Lodge. You know, it
Yeah.
was very important for its members to understand their link or their tie to Africa. You know, and that would, of course, no pun intended, it would color our experience here in the Americas, and also demonstrate the necessity for us to stick together with a common goal, a common vision, or as Garvey said, one aim. You know, so I think that's something that many groups have benefited from. You know, it's
Hmm.
a lot of talk of people who may have been influenced by the organization and who weren't members. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's dope. And all right. And as far as like, we can talk about frameworks, philosophical frameworks and principles, right?
Hmm.
We know that each school of thought, each school of fraternity has their own kind of framework that is used to help mold the initiate's mindset to have a collective thinking of the group to know what the agenda is, right?
Hmm.
So, say on an esoteric philosophical aspect,
Hmm.
how do the seven hermetic principles function as a metaphysical framework for our people within the
Well,
lodges? Or
well, the seven hermetic principles usually associated with, I want to say, the Kabbalion. So you have the law of
yeah,
mentalism all the way up to polarity. The Kabbalion is interesting hermetically because it's a modern contrivance, right? It's not
hmm,
it's not classical like Neoplatonist type of hermeticism, like the original hermeticism, right? So when we talk
hmm,
about Hermes and we talk about his connection to Freemasonry, it's public knowledge that he is said to have created some pillars, and within
yeah,
those pillars there were seven liberal arts and sciences. Again, this is public knowledge. You can look
again,
it up online. And so I think I've always thought that the seven hermetic principles that are covered in the Kabbalion really allude to the seven liberal arts and sciences, which really
hmm,
would benefit us because, you know, coming out of slavery into a lodge, learning about the seven liberal arts when you weren't allowed to go to college, you weren't allowed to read and write, but you're
hmm,
learning about the seven liberal arts and sciences, which are said to be the highest tool for polishing the mind, you know.
yes,
So
that's
even
beautiful.
though there is an esoteric aspect, there's a practical aspect as well. They kind of go hand in hand, you know. So, and I try to always bring it to something tangible because it's easy to get lost in hermeticism and just
Yes,
have philosophies and never act on something, you know.
that's dope. That's dope. I like how you say that. It's true because you know, before traveling into a lodge, right? I
Hmm.
always saw it like seeing the symbol as a youth. I always knew that and not trying to bring racial divide, but always knew that this is our craft, our people. Like, we study the roots of it. What we do now is like that's mainstream from 1800s, 1800s. But this was before it was called masonry. This is what they practiced in the mystery schools,
Hmm.
like down to Kemet and such. And some people try to like, oh no, it's what the European gave in modern time. But we know, many
Even
people, this is
Anderson's
our science.
Constitution says, Anderson's Constitution, if we want to talk about so-called mainstream, what the European created, even
Hmm.
Anderson's Constitution says that it's from Egypt, which is
Yeah,
Africa, you know.
yeah. Got more people in the comments putting up some stuff right here. What you said? Seven liberal arts brings order out of chaos. That's a fact.
Hmm.
And damn, I don't want to say this and catch flack because I know peace of the gods and earth, man. I know they they might want to turn my head off for this, but I believe within their lessons you will find some of the liberal arts in there
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
if you
yeah,
if your mind's open enough to pick up on it. You're like, oh,
yeah.
I see where they're taking it.
Oh yeah,
Did you
yeah,
did you see that in
yeah.
there when you were studying?
When you talk about supreme, there's so many different ways because supreme alphabet, supreme mathematics are like the entry point. And when you look at the definitions, when you just are examining the alphabet in general, there are correspondences to what we call the craft. Whether or not if, Father Allah or Elijah Muhammad were members at some point, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Or maybe
Yeah,
they knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody.
who knew somebody,
Who
right?
knows? But
Because
I think the important part is that the knowledge got out to people.
Nah, that's a fact. That's a fact. All right, we're gonna, again, not trying to disrespect the craft, but we're just gonna try to balance it out for those who know. What connection can be drawn between the principle and Masonic duality symbolism?
Well, if we just look at, because Masonic duality, I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that. I know there's people that would take certain furnishings and would say that there's a dualistic principle. Okay, let's just say I give it the benefit of the doubt. We talk about polarity and duality. We're talking about basically opposites, reconciliation of opposites.
Yeah.
A third way. And I'm not sure if I personally subscribe to that idea of there being a duality. I think there's a oneness that we have a hard time assimilating, and so we divide it in half as humans because our senses are limited. We only have so-called 5 senses. So for us, things are either hot and cold, or wet and dry, or up and down, left and right, that kind of thing. But that's just for us to be able to have a point of reference to where we happen to be at a particular moment of time and space. But there's really no up and down. There's really no wet and dry. These are things that we created in order to be able to use things for our benefit. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. Because it's our idea of, like, man's idea of trying to grasp the concept, the idea, the existence of God. Let's put it in the focus and put it in the framework of box. So if I see this symbol, or if I go through this form of notion, that means it's part of this system right here that we deal with. This science right here means this right here. So if you can relate that to that, like your initiation, people will go in like, I remember how it first went. And, if you could go back to the time when you got initiated, there were certain things that took place. And when you look back at it, you're like, wow, I remember this part happened to me. And then I used my instincts at this moment. And that helped me proceed through. You get what I'm saying? So these are things that, that's why I say within that framework, or the call, recall, because every school of thought has their
call and response.
They call and response initiation thing. Like it's a beautiful thing, man. Like the Masonic framework. And again, this podcast right here, we're not seeking converts, nor are we speaking as authoritative figures. We're just building on the science of it. Because some people will come in the comment section or be leaving dumb comments. You know what I'm saying? Try not to get into that.
Right. Yeah, but on the duality and polarity, I did just want to say is that the biggest thing that they can offer to us is that there's a range, right? You don't necessarily have to be extreme right or extreme left. There's a range. And within that range, there's a place for everybody within that range. You know what I mean? So we used to say, get in where you fit in.
Get in where you fit in, yeah. Now it's very, because, oh my God, like, being exposed to different school of thoughts, and you probably could add on to that. You don't see when you look at the sciences from the other school of thoughts, and you look at the science that you're in now with your school of thought, you be like, oh wow, you make the connection, like, oh, I see it right here.
Yeah, like it's the same, but just expressed differently.
Expressed differently, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is like you look at the the gods will say knowledge, wisdom, understanding. And there are certain things you be like strength, wisdom, beauty, or Kabbalistic, Keta Hokmabina, stuff like that. You're like, oh shoot, it's like
it's just a different thing. It's the same, but it's different. Yeah.
It is different, but you be like, you know what? As you said earlier, these men were onto something, but I don't want to put that label on them because people would take it, offensive. But you be like, this wisdom that they have, it wasn't unique, man.
No, it wasn't. It was essence. It was. I think they describe it. They used the word reveal, and I don't know how true this is. I didn't look up the etymology on it, but some people say that reveal and reveal are like the same. So someone may have seen the wisdom and then they put their thing around it. You know, they put
Yeah.
their clothes on it. Some people put different clothes, but it's all the same, you know.
Got you, got you. And so this is dope, man. Gotta get you back on here, brother. We gotta go deeper. Um, how do both systems portray the journey from ignorance to illumination?
Both systems.
Like it's like let's go like for all right, on the physical plane of initiation, and then we talk about the esoteric side of it from what you're
Hmm.
going through.
Hmm.
How does it reveal to one that one is, without reveal or reveal anything that basically shows one path to illumination?
Yeah, I would say that it could be summed up in just being born in general. You know, if you have the awareness while you're being born, it's black, right?
Hmm.
It's dark. I think they called it the perfect black in Egypt, right? It was the perfect
Hmm.
blackness of the womb. And then when you're born, there's this light that rushes in, and you're
Yeah.
not used, like in the Matrix, they say you've never used your eyes before, so you don't really know what you're looking at. But then as time go on and you have the experience of what we're calling life, you're understanding a little bit of what you're seeing, you're able to apply and get more experiences. And that's kind of like knowing that the journey of illumination is just that. You'll never, it's not the destination of enlightenment, it's the journey, you
It's
know.
a journey, exactly. The journey, in which we pick up a lot more because something they say light attracts more light,
Hmm.
steel
Hmm.
sharpens steel,
Yeah.
and it's like
Or
little tools, little
ALX,
things you be like, huh?
ALX.
Yeah, likes, yeah.
Hmm.
Yo, it's very it's powerful. It's beautiful, man. So for you, what is the process psychologically of squaring the stone? The definition of squaring the stone psychologically. What does it mean to one?
Psychologically squaring the stone. So when we what is okay, you have to put the stone into a particular context, right? So if you're squaring something, that means that you're changing its shape, right?
Yeah,
So you're changing its shape. So based on the information, it wasn't square to begin with, right?
it wasn't.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that means that it was. If you're squaring it, then that means that you're using it. You're squaring it to be able to use it for a particular purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change the shape because in the state that it's in its natural state, is not going to be able to be used for the building that you're building, right?
Got you.
So psychologically, it begins with understanding that you're not perfect, you know, and that you can improve in certain things in order to get to where you want. Because I think that all people have a longing for something called better. Better
That's
is,
exactly.
it depends on the person what better is, but I think everyone longs for better. And then you look at where you are, and then you look at where better is, and you try to chip off certain things from yourself that may be keeping you from there, you know, certain habits, certain ways of thinking more particularly. And
Hmm.
literally, you do have to change the way that you think if you're going to get to where you want to go. So when we talk about psychologically squaring the stone, we're really talking about preparing your mind to take you to the place that you want to be.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's dope. That's dope. That's dope. So, how long have you been traveling for? You say it's like a quarter century, right?
Pretty close
Just
to it,
for
yeah.
quarter century. Were there any times you felt like you like discouraged on your journey?
All the time. All the time. I'm actually going through some of that right now. Yeah, it's all the time. It's all the time because we're not. You know, I think it was kind of obvious that before I became a Freemason, I was into the science already, right?
Hmm.
And so there may be people that aren't necessarily into the science the way that I am. And that's not to say that one is higher than the other. That's not to say one is
Yeah.
better than the other. Everybody
Mm.
have their own different path. But if I'm talking about one thing and then people that they just like, oh, we ain't trying to hear all of that. We just here to feed the people. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. Go ahead, feed the people. I'll feed the people too, but what about this over here? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I'm finding is that, especially in the South, the Bible Belt, I often have a hard time discussing certain aspects, like correspondences, like say with maybe with the Hebrew letters, for example, and certain things that we do. You know, they don't want to hear that. This is the Bible.
It's about
you know what I'm saying?
bro.
So sometimes that could be a little just seeing how the society changes over time. You know, you can't do nothing about that and just hope that we select the best people possible. You know, and not just people that just want to get in to see what it's about and then never show back up again. You know, it's a lot of.
I've seen
know,
that. I remember when I got initiated, it was three brothers, one being my cousin and another brother, and we did the first round. Never heard from them again. Like they never came back. I'm like, all right, maybe they just came out of curiosity. But I remember I stayed, and I was the only one within my group that stayed.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it's not made for the weak. Like the dedication and the constant study in yourself, and facing your fears, knowing when to be quiet. And it's not out of basically other individuals outside stimulus. It's one from yourself, because now your microcosm has been rocked. You've been humbled. So you're like, oh, shoot. So it's like what you thought you knew of yourself is not who you are. You're like, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me. And then when you advance to other degrees, like that to the second degree, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. This is real right here. The things I was learning, I'm like, okay, like it's pretty deep, man. So I know that feeling of sometimes you be discouraged because it's like people don't understand it, like when you're coming from how you see things now. It's
especially people on TikTok, man. Every other comment is you devil worshiping. Every other comment is, oh, what did Aleister Crowley say? Like, I'm not even a Crowley fan. Get out of my comments with that. You know what I mean? It's just like they just assume that you must be some kind of individual. You know,
you gotta forgive them, because it's like people, man, fear what he doesn't know. Of course, they're gonna throw dirt. It's like you can't cast pearls before swine. And I'm not gonna try to sit here and explain it to you, because no, I don't drink blood out of a cup, out of a skull. We're not running around naked. It's not looking like a Diddy party. We're not, we don't have no baby oil on us, and we're not, chanting nothing crazy. If you want to know, go knock on the doors and find out yourself, and you realize you'll meet a lot of cool brothers within there. A lot of some people you thought you would never come across. You're like, damn, I didn't know you were here. Like, as many times I walk in, I'm like, yo, I didn't know he was one. That is wild. Like, dude, I know you for like 20 years, dude. I didn't know you were a part of this, and it's pretty dope, man. And I see in your background on your page as well on TikTok. If you guys want to know more about this brother, you go on TikTok, you'll find him. I see you got the tarot symbol in the background. Do you dabble into that?
Oh yes, sir. I believe fully that it is a representation of the initiatic experience, right? So I know a lot of people don't necessarily see it that way, but the magician in particularly, I would say, represents a stage of understanding that the elements are in your hands, and you can make or break your own future based on what you do. To me, that's what the magician is all about, But before the magician, you're the fool, right? The first one is the fool. He got his head in the sky. He got his clothes in a little stick, and he's stepping off of a cliff, getting ready to die. That's the fool, right? And to me, that reminds me of the first degree. You just have this faith that no matter what, everything's going to be fine.
Whatever happens, right? Yeah. I remember my brother Ron told a story that when he first jumped into masonry, he said, he explained it on the show before. He said he got there in the basement. He's like, he was, blindfolded. He said, if anything happens weird here, I am swinging.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I had the same thought. First sign of anything wicked,
it's going down. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Mine was like that, but it was just like when yo, bro, all I gotta say is like the tactic. I remember it happening here.
Mm.
It was weird when I heard some dudes like, "Mommy!" screaming, "Mommy!" So I'm like, "Yo, what's going on, son?" I ain't gonna lie, like, yo, what's going on over there? Like, no, sit down. I'm like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yo, bro, are you
Mm.
sure?" Right? They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." In my head,
Mm.
the same thing. I'm like, they're about to know who I really am. Every piece of furniture in here will start flying. I am
Yeah.
swinging on dudes, bro. But nah, it was all good. But I know the feeling
Yeah.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, what's up with that? Yo, what's going on, man? Like, yo, is he good?
Right. Right.
Oh man,
Gotta
I wish I could
always
go back.
remember your faith. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, that's really the only thing that we have.
yeah, that's. Yo, that's funny, man. I bet you everyone's story of the first time was like, yo, what is going on down there? That's part of the framework. That's part of the process. It's to really, as you said, the fool. Like, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
Are you ready to commit? Because
Yeah.
it does take a lot from you too, man. And then after a while, you're fine.
And there's
So,
a lot of people. Let's also say that there's a lot of people that say that they have faith and
mhm,
they don't.
they don't, right?
And this process is going to show if you really got it or if you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah. Because you think that first one is something. All right, we'll see you
Mhm.
next time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Like you say
you
you
see,
believe in
you
God,
see.
but do you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you know God or you believe in God? You're gonna find out right
Right.
there. There's a difference
Hmm.
between knowing and believing, and trust me, I'm still learning. So the question I have, how does the lodge function as a microcosm of a broader society?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we was discussing before we came on, right? In terms of
Hmm.
your lodge, and we discussing how the membership of the lodge or the lodge takes on the culture of those who are in it, right?
Hmm.
So if you go to my lodge, which is in Covington, Georgia, you're going to have a different perspective than you would from somebody whose members are from Atlanta, Georgia, because even though we're all in Georgia, you have a more rural area versus the city. So those are different lifestyles. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So in terms of the lodge being a microcosm of the whole, I think it allows for people, so long as you have a belief in God, to be able to come together, and they might not otherwise have ever came together. You know, uh,
Exactly.
I can't think of any other scenario where you would see devout Christians and Muslims in the same place talking.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That's not a religious thing. You know, it's just you who you are kind of thing, and you just happen to be a Christian. He happens to be a Muslim. He happens to be a Hindu. You know,
hmm. But we
so in
meet.
that
But we.
way, I think Freemasonry kind of exhibits a kind of universal appeal in a sense that it's kind of just if you're about making the society better, come on in so that we can work together instead of letting these things keep us apart.
And that's a fact. With that, that's a fact. Before we get up out of here, you said you were in Atlanta. Did you ever cross paths with the Nuwapian Grand Lodge? Or
Absolutely.
Dr. You
Yeah,
did?
yeah. They
How was
were
that?
pretty big when I got here. They were pretty big when I got here in Georgia. Like they had just opened their Grand Lodge, and I used to be
Word.
downtown all the time on Auburn Avenue, and they'd be out, not like the Hebrew Israelites, but they would hold classes outside, and then they would pretty much break your belief system. If you didn't know what you was talking about with your religion, then the Wapians would get at you, right? And then they
Word.
opened up their own lodge, and they were growing pretty good until you know he
Yeah.
got taken down for that thing. You know.
Yeah. I'm not even touching that, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
I heard about that lodge. I heard about that lodge. And I was always wondering, are they still functioning? Are they still,
I don't think
um,
so. I think from the Moroccans that I knew before what happened, they literally disappeared like the next day. They had a store
oh,
down in Riverdale, Georgia, that closed the next day. I used to go there and get all my books and stuff packed up. I couldn't find a New Wapian for like 2 or 3 years after the incident happened. So
oh, wow.
yeah, I don't think their lodge is in existence anymore.
Oh, damn, That's crazy. Brother Soul, man, it was a pleasure to have you on here, my man.
Yes,
For
sir.
real.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the chat.
Now we got to get you back on here, man. We got to talk more. We're gonna talk more about some, you know, some other ideas we're gonna bring on here, man. I think we got to go put the gas on this esoteric teaching for the people, man. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying?
That's what I would like to.
Yeah, because our elders, you know, shout out to Bobby Hemmett, you know,
Mhm.
they laid the foundation for us, so it's time for us to keep it going. You know, rest in peace, brother Panic. So yeah,
Absolutely.
man, I think our
Yes,
people
sir.
need that stuff. My people, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe. We're gonna have Brother Soul Magic come back. With that being said, NYP Talk Show, we out. Peace.